Okay, natural resources. We are going to look at the second part of this Introduction to Natural Resources unit. In the first part, we looked at some terminology and things that you need to be familiar with as we go throughout the course of this semester. This time, we're actually going to look at um, how, as humans, we have affected the environment. And I know there's a lot of people that talk about, global warming is not a thing, environmental change is not a thing, and I think we can all look at the evidence and see that there are things that have been done by humans that have made a difference in the way the environment operates. So we're going to look at human impact and how it has changed the way we view natural resources. So when we're looking at human impact, first thing we need to look at is the number of people that are living in a particular area. So it's kind of like carrying capacity with animals, and I know that we're looking at humans, but when I think about an area where there's too many deer, for instance, or actually let's even go to our farm here. Right now, we have more goats than we really need. We have got, we don't really have the pasture land that we want in order to be able to sustain what we have, and we can have issues with illnesses and sicknesses. And so we're actually have gone through the process of selling off some of our goats to make sure that we keep the population down so that they are healthy and that they all have resources. So the first thing we look at when we're looking at how humans have affected the environment is to look at the population, and that's just the number of a species at a certain point in time. Um, as of 2017, you're looking at more than 7.6 billion people worldwide, and the projections are that we're looking at within the next 30 years, maybe as many as 9 billion people. And a lot of the reason for that is because we have more people that are living to adulthood. We have more people that are living longer because of medical advances. We have better health care, and so people are living longer lives, and because of that, the population continues to grow. And so those are some things we need to consider whenever we're looking at sustaining what we have amongst the number of people that we have on our planet and in our environment. So whenever we're looking at population growth, if we were to have zero population growth, that would mean that the number of babies that are being born is equal to the number of people who are dying. And typically, that is not the case. Um, Typically, you have more people that are either being born or people that are living later. So we are experiencing population growth because we don't have that equal balance of people being born and dying off at the same time. Um, there are some people that struggle with the idea of population control. And in the United States, it is not a major issue, but there are some countries where, in order to keep the population under control, couples are only allowed to have a certain number of children. And so, as much as we think about the freedoms that we have here, that is not the case all over the world. Um, One thing that is interesting, though, you see here it says as society's education level increases, birth rates decline. And a lot of that reason is because um, you're looking at people who are typically going to be better educated and have better access to modern advances, and are going to be more likely to use birth control methods, and to not have children that are going to be used as, I don't want to say labor, but yes, that's one way to put it. So, in a lot of countries, children are born and used as labor, and that is not something that's typical in the United States. But we do have to look beyond the borders of our country whenever we're looking at the idea of population growth. There are a lot of demands on our natural resources because of the number of people that we have living on our planet. We're looking at using plants and animals as food sources. We're looking at having to have trees as far as creating shelter. You're looking at having your water, soil, air, and wildlife as far as these natural, renewable natural resources. And we are sustaining things as far as those renewable resources are concerned, because we can allow the population of deer to grow, we can allow the population of cattle to grow, but what you really have to look at and be careful with are these non-renewable natural resources, or things that cannot be replaced, minerals and fossil fuels and things like that. You're literally looking at generations upon generations to create things like fossil fuels. So, when those things are gone, we're not going to have access to those anymore. Um, One term you need to be familiar with is the term sustainable, and we talked about sustainable a little bit already. But whenever we're talking about sustainable resources, we're looking at uh, doing things that we can to help protect things like wetlands, to help protect wildlife, to help protect groundwater, to help protect our oceans. So when we're looking at sustaining the resources that we have, practices are necessary in order for us to be able to protect the land that we have and use them for future generations. So obviously, people are going to make lots of different types of demands on the environment. We have factory emissions, we have emissions from vehicles, we have people who are doing conventional farming methods. There are a lot of different things that we do as humans on a daily basis that are going to take a toll on the environment. I sometimes just look at the amount of things that get thrown away, and I wonder, where does it all go? Obviously we have landfills, but once those landfills are full, what happens? They just build another landfill somewhere else. So we really, as a society, we would be doing ourselves and our future a favor if we would start using resources that are more environmentally friendly, decomposing type materials. Um, Household waste is just, you know, astronomically crazy as far as the amount of trash that each person is going to um, use in a day. You can see here it says in the U.S. the average person creates 4.4 pounds of trash and 100 gallons of wastewater per day. And I really think that 4.4 pounds is kind of low, to be perfectly honest. And I guess it just depends on who you're working with, and whether or not they're throwing lots of resources away or using reusable stuff. So um, it's very scary to think about the idea of these um, landfills, and the fact that there are things in them that will not break down for hundreds of years. So we need to make sure that we're using things that are more sustainable as far as uh, our resources and environment go. As far as atmospheric damage, we know that a lot of the things that we have done have caused us to have more carbon dioxide in the air. And I'm not jumping on the bandwagon of, cows and carbon monoxide. I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. Yes, they do emit carbon monoxide, but cars do too. And, that's just not even an argument that holds a whole lot of water for me. Um, the actions of people are what create air pollution. We drive our cars. We need resources that are built in factories. This is causing the greenhouse effect, which basically means that you're trapping hot air inside the ozone layer of the Earth. When you walk, if you're in cohort A or B, if we go to the greenhouse to work on our aquaponics system, when you walk from outside into the greenhouse, you're going to notice that there is a marked difference in temperature. And it literally is because that greenhouse is used to trap the energy from the sun, and that air stays hot. And so because of that, um, that's the reason why a greenhouse does what it does. That's the reason why you can grow things in it in the middle of winter. But we're basically doing the same thing to our planet. Um, so when we're looking at the ozone layer, um, this whole layer prevents harmful radiation from actually coming into the earth. And the fact that we are trapping this carbon dioxide beneath the ozone layer, um, that's what's causing the greenhouse effect. Having holes in the ozone layer is actually, yes, it can cause the carbon dioxide to not be trapped anymore as long as there's holes, but the problem is you're letting in radiation. And so we're really not doing a whole lot to help save our environment here as far as air is concerned. We really need to look at the emissions that we have as far as vehicles and factories, especially, and work on lowering those emissions so that we can protect our ozone layer a little bit longer. Talked about overpopulation and carrying capacity. If an area is overpopulated, it just means that you don't have as many resources. It's kind of like if we were to have an FFA meeting and we prepared for 25 students and 40 showed up. We're not going to have enough resources for everybody, and that's basically what happens with overpopulation. So you're looking at depleting resources. This picture that you see on this slide, this is desertification, where land that used to be productive becomes desert. And it's just because we do have rising temperatures on our planet, and we do have fewer resources to be able to be used by the animals that we have out there. So we're looking at lots of issues with land becoming unusable, and what can we do about those types of things. That's a lot of deer. So when I look at this picture, I see all this deer, and we're talking about overpopulation again. And really, hunger itself is going to be a result of overpopulation. I just mentioned that scenario about an FFA meeting. But there is only so much food to go around, and once that food is gone, then it's gone. And if you're trying to split a pizza between two people, then you're going to get plenty of food. But if you're trying to split a pizza between 20 people, you're not going to get so much food. So when we look at hunger and the acute shortage of food, you're also looking at things like malnourishment and animals not getting the nourishment that they need, which can eventually cause endangerment and potentially extinction. We're looking at the difference here between conservation and preservation. And so we have everything we have to get from our environment and our ecosystem. And so when we're looking at our future, our earth, where our children and grandchildren are going to live, we have to look at the idea of conserving the things that we have and using less of the things that we have, but then also preservation, where we are looking at keeping things the way they were. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. So conservation, we're using things in a wise way. We're not using anything in a wasteful way. One thing I always tell my kids is don't be wasteful. And so a conservationist is going to be somebody who does use resources, but they're going to use resources in a wise way, and they're not going to overuse or abuse the idea of having those particular resources. Preservation is where you're just not using it at all. So if we're on a preserve, we're not necessarily going to use anything that's on the preserve. So with a preservation, we're not harvesting things from a particular area. So conserve means use it, but be careful and mindful of what you use. And preserve means leave it as it was. So that is it as far as the introduction to natural resources. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask those, and I will make sure that I either answer them or find somebody that can. Next week we'll be looking at forestry, so kind of be prepared for that. See you guys.